Hi, welcome to the channel. I'm Lauro Miller and I make videos about programming. Today's video will be dedicated to exceptions, where we'll go through the main constructs, the try, catch, and finally blocks, and also some tips to improve our programs by correctly implementing error handling. Let's switch Notion and let's get started. Let's talk about how to handle exceptions in JavaScript. So we're going to explore two constructs, the throw statement and the try, catch, finally block. Let's switch the IDE. And here we are going to create a new file. So new file, I'm gonna say throw.js. And here actually in JavaScript, we can throw anything, right? So if we throw one, this is gonna stop the execution of the program, which means the program is going to exit with a non-zero code. And here, if I were to have some additional statement, I will say I will not print, right? So throw is one way of exiting the program in JavaScript. If I save this, come back to the console and or to the terminal and I run node throw.js, then it's going to say, okay, throw one broke everything. So because there is no specific information about the error or anything, this is just going to exit and print one on the screen. If we want to actually throw a proper error here, then we should create a new error like so, right? And if we throw a new error with the one string, this is going to give us some more information. So what you see here at the bottom, this is the stack trace, and this basically we can, I think exploring this would be a bit more advanced, so it's a bit beyond the scope of this introduction to JavaScript. But if you ever come across an error, you will probably see that there are a couple of functions here on the top, and this is basically all the functions that were being executed. So one example here, maybe I can actually try to simulate. Let's say that we have two functions, right? Function out, let's say outer function like this. Is it wrong? Like this? It's better? Yes. And then we have a function inner, right? And the function inner is going to throw a new error. So if I were to actually come here and say throw a new error, and then the function outer is going to call the function inner. And once I execute this, you will see that we have a couple of calls here. We have at inner, and then this is within the at outer, and then this is within this at object.anonymous, right? So this line here is already not exactly programmed by us. It's a little bit outside of what we are doing, but the inner and the outer functions, they were implemented by us. And the stack trace really prints out all the functions that are being open or that are being executed at the time the exception is thrown. So this is one construct that we can use, and this can be used not only to throw errors that are going to stop the program, but also to throw errors that we should perhaps act upon. How do we actually act upon these errors is the scope of the next part of this discussion, and it is about the try, catch, finally block. So let's create a new file here. I'm going to keep things short. I'm just going to call this try.js. And the structure for a try, catch, finally block is something like this. Catch, and then here is the error that was caught, and then we have finally. Right, so the idea here is that within the try block, we're going to execute whatever code we would normally execute. Then within the catch block, we are going to handle any error that is thrown by this code within the try block. And the finally block will always be executed whether there is an error or not, right? So you can actually omit the catch, the catch code block. You can also omit the finally code block, and you can also omit both. It's no problem. Oh, I think that the catch you cannot omit. Okay, you cannot omit the catch, but you can just leave it empty. Okay, it's not a problem. So the idea here, let's perhaps try a few things. I'm gonna say console.log. I will always print. Okay, this is already a valid structure. I'm gonna save this, and if I come here back to the terminal, I'm gonna clear everything, and I'll say node try.js, and it will print the I will always print line. Now let's go a little bit beyond the normal, traditional, or very simple examples, and let's actually define our own custom error class. So we're going to say user, for example, user not found, and this extends the error class. Okay, so this is something that we can, and this I need to have the curly brackets like this. So now I can actually throw a new user not found, right? Like so. And here you see that this is gonna warn me and it's gonna say throw of exception is caught locally. This simply means that as soon as I throw this, I'm gonna enter into the catch block. And maybe in some programs it's the case that you would have this handled somewhere else, but for us here this is exactly what we're going to do. I mean, if we were to actually have another function, so let's call it function find user, for example, and then here we will say throw new user not found, and within the try we will call find user, then the warning goes away, right? So the warning is just if we throw something at the same exact level that we have the catch block. If I save this and execute the code, let's try this again, it will just print the I will always print function or line. And that's quite interesting because I actually threw an error from within the find user function, but nothing happened. I mean, the program just continued to execute, and that's because the catch block is empty. So there was an error here. We entered the catch block. There is nothing to do here. And then we entered the finally block and we printed the line that we will always print. If I were to console.log the error here, then the output is going to be something different. Now you will see that we have the error here, and in the end we have that line that is always going to be here. Now I can, of course, extend this example a little bit by having a users array, and the users array is going to be an array of objects. So let's say we have ID of 0, a name of Lauro. We have an ID of 1. So I'm just going to add a couple here. We have an ID of 1 and a name of John. And we have an ID of 2 and a name of Jane. Now let's say that I'm trying to find a user by ID, and then I will say if users, let's do this here like this. If const user is going to be equal to users.find, maybe find is better, and this is going to take an element, so it's not an element but a function, and then we are going to compare the user ID with the ID that is provided. Now, if there is no user, because the find is going to return null if there is no result. If I enter here in the definition, actually it's going to return undefined rather than null. So I could actually console, let's try a few things. Let's console.log user here. And then we will say, we will work a little bit with the different combinations here and see what are the values returned by defined function. So 0, 1, 2, 3, we should be able to find for the first 3, but for the last one, we should either get null or undefined. I don't really remember, and we get undefined. Okay, yeah, so that's undefined if we cannot find the object in the array. And then we'll say if no user, simply throw new user not found, right? And then if there is a user, we'll say return user. So now I can say that within my try block, I'm going to say const user is equal to find user, and here maybe I can try to find with 0, and then I can also say first user, let's say first user, and then we say const second user, and we'll say find user with an ID of 3. And as we know, this is going to throw something, and this is going to just give us back the user, right? So if I save this, and maybe I can also add a couple of console.logs here. So the first user, and I also want to console log the second user here. I'll save this, execute, and you see that we successfully print the first user, but when we come to the second user, then we get this error, user not found. So one way that we can use this catch statement is to actually check for the type of error. So if error instance of user not found, we can console a different message. We can simply console.log user not found in the system, right? And if it's not an instance of user not found, we'll say console.log a general error has occurred. And then that's really very generic. Maybe we wouldn't do something like this, but if I save, you will see that now we get a much nicer message, user not found in the system. So let's see one example of a general error that has occurred. And here it is, if I were to console.log first user, do I have something? No, I don't have last name dot length. Okay, so this is going to cause the program to throw a type error because the last name is undefined, and as we saw before, undefined and null values, they have no properties. So once I try to access the length property of undefined, I'm going to get a type error. I'm going to save this and I'm going to run, and you will see a general error has occurred. If I were to console.log here the e.constructor.name, this is going to give me, or the error, sorry, not e, but error, sorry, force of habit. If we were to console error.constructor.name, this is going to give us the actual error that was thrown, right? And this was a type error. We can also console.log the error.message. And if I were to save this, this is going to give us cannot read property length of undefined. And these are just a few examples of what we can do with errors in JavaScript. As you can see, this gives us quite a bit of control over how we execute our program. We can execute some logging, we can execute some retry statements here. We could perhaps try to do some alternative logic in case this find user function throws an error. We could also handle other custom errors differently. So there is a lot of control that we gain over our program by using these try, catch, finally statements. That's it for today. I hope I gave you a good enough overview about how we can use errors to actually improve our program rather than making it worse. Errors don't always mean that our program needs to break. Actually, they can be used for a variety of good purposes if only we can implement them correctly. So let's keep that in the back of our minds, because when we come back to more applied knowledge, we will definitely make use of them. In the next video, we will start discussing functions. If you don't want to miss that, make sure to subscribe to the channel and you'll get a notification when the video is out. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.